Okay, here we go.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the March 3rd, 2021 Palm Springs Public Library Board of Trustees. Jeannie, can you do a roll call for me, please?
Yes. Craig Borba.
Here.
Melissa Cronin.
Here.
Juanita Garner.
Here.
David Kelly.
Here.
Ed McBride.
Present. I'd like to welcome Anthony. He's going to talk to us about, he wanted to talk to us about an item that I had on the agenda last month, but we'll move it up to his presentation. It is 8C on our agenda, by the way. So if there's any questions or anything we need to follow up after his discussion with us, we'll throw it there if that's okay. Okay, Anthony, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've been to one of our meetings, so welcome back.
Yeah. So my understanding is the question is about standing committees versus ad hoc committees. And so I just kind of want to briefly review and open it up to questions, the difference. Both of them are less than a majority of the entire board. So either way, it's going to be less than a quorum. The basic fundamental difference is whether there's ongoing jurisdiction related to the matter, or if the matter is going to terminate at some point when the project's completed. So in a standing committee, it's certainly for, if the board is going to create a committee that's going to have ongoing jurisdiction, perhaps it's going to focus on a particular subject matter, like what I got from Jeannie. If there's a subcommittee on policies, and that policy subcommittee is going to be ongoing to periodically review policies and procedures and provide input on that for years and years and years to come, then that needs to be a standing committee. That clearly has ongoing jurisdiction. There's not going to be a point in time when all policies are done and you're never going to look at them again. And so that would be one that you certainly would create a standing committee. Conversely, if you have ad hoc committees, again, less than a quorum, but this time it's focused on a particular project or issue or policy, but a singular issue or limited in scope, and that it will not be perpetual. At some point, it will conclude. Typically, we like to see that it's going to conclude within a year, but it can go on longer. There's no hard, fast rule about when an ad hoc committee has to terminate. So obviously with the library building subcommittee that was established a while ago, I believe you did post agendas for that, but technically you wouldn't have needed to. Technically that would have been an ad hoc subcommittee because you were focused on one particular issue. And once the recommendation was made, then the subcommittee would disband.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Anthony, because you're answering a particular question and you set up a scenario right in the middle of your discussion. So right now, what I've understood is that there's a standing committee and an ad hoc committee. And before you get into the discussion of when it's appropriate to actually post notices, maybe you should actually discuss which ones are subject to certain rules, because I'm not entirely certain. I think you jumped ahead of what your story is.
Okay. Well, standing committees are subject to the Brown Act, and ad hoc committees are not subject to the Brown Act. So if it's an ad hoc committee, which is going to be limited in its jurisdiction and will not be perpetual, then no agenda is required and no public notification is required. But if it either has ongoing jurisdiction and it's intended to be perpetual, then that's a standing committee. It does need to comply with the Brown Act, which includes the posting of agendas, taking of minutes, and all other requirements related to the Brown Act.
So your example, again, could you just go what your example was about?
So the example was the library building subcommittee. That one was limited in focus. So it was about selecting a building site. And as soon as that discussion was concluded, it would be dissolved. And so in that case, since it's not perpetual, that would be an ad hoc subcommittee.
And not requiring
And that would not require agendas or minutes.
It seems kind of interesting though, because that particular committee was of pretty strong public interest.
Yeah.
And so it would seem to be in the best interest to have all of those meetings noticed.
And that's what the board did. I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. I'm saying it wasn't required. You can always go above the requirements of the Brown Act. You can't go below. It's the floor, not the ceiling. So all I'm trying to say is, in that instance, what you all did was great in taking that as treating it as a standing committee. But is it legally required? No, it wasn't.
Right. So, and then just to make it clear too, the minute that there was, because our majority here is 3 people. So the minute that there were 3 people of the Board of Trustees present at that meeting who were active in that meeting, then that should have been a noticed meeting, or no?
If there's 7 members on your board.
No, 5.
Oh, 5. Then yes, once you hit 3, you've hit the requirements for it to just be a normal board meeting.
And it should have been noticed at that point. So an ad hoc meeting, that's a purpose. Going back to when we were forming that building committee, that ad hoc building committee, we purposely only had 2 library board trustee members on it.
Right. Because if you would have had more than a quorum on another subcommittee, you're really messing up the Brown Act, because it doesn't know how to treat you any longer. You've got a majority of board members sitting on a subcommittee that's under the jurisdiction of the library board. So I don't want to get too caught up in the library board building subcommittee, because that's dissolved already. But for the purposes of this discussion, my understanding is there's 4 subcommittees that are being looked at: advocacy, budget, building, and policies. And so under that, if you're looking at budget, for instance, if you want a budget subcommittee that is going to be ongoing, and it's going to look at the budget every quarter, every 6 months, or every year, and in that case, yes, that should be a standing committee. However, if you want to create an ad hoc subcommittee that only meets, let's say, for 3 months out of this year to work with Jeannie on the budget for this coming year, that would be an ad hoc. Because as soon as that budget is adopted, it's going to dissolve until next year when it meets for those 3 months.
I have a quick question. I hate to go back to the building thing again, but we had 2 representatives on that committee.
Mhm.
However, I attended all the meetings and was in the audience. Was that wrong, or was that okay?
No, that's fine, as long as you're not participating in the discussion of that meeting. For the city council, they can attend subcommittees, standing committees, but they cannot participate, because then you basically have a board meeting.
Great, thank you.
So Anthony, once again, I know you don't want to beat this one example, but I think my question might have a different meaning. That subcommittee was not one of our subcommittees. It was
That's
a
true.
subcommittee of the city council. So if the city council named that committee, formed the rules around that, is it any different than it would be if we did it?
Yes.
Am I making sense?
Yes, it is entirely different. So if the city council creates a legislative body, such as this commission or any other commission, the second that the council takes action to form a committee and appoints the members to it, it is subject to the Brown Act. Even if it is limited in duration, it would still be subject to the Brown Act.
Right. I think just about anything is subject to the Brown Act, but I think that going back to the whole reason why we're discussing this is because you had just called it an ad hoc committee that didn't need to be noticed. So now are you saying that because it was formed by the city council, it does need to be noticed?
Correct. So I don't have all of the background information about the building subcommittee. I was using that as an example because I thought it was a subcommittee. But if the council created that and appointed the members, then yes, it would be considered a board and commission, even if it is temporary, or a committee or whatever you want to call it, but that's not the same as subcommittees for a commission. That was entirely its own committee.
Can I ask a question as regarding when and why the standing committee falls under the Brown Act? Is it ruled by that just by virtue of being a standing committee and covering issues over a long period of time, like you said, or is there a question of the number of people gathered? So for example, if we had a committee that was only 2 people, that's a standing committee, that's not a quorum, but do we still need to notice it just because of the virtue of the fact that it's a standing committee?
Yeah, so let me just read the definition. So standing committee of a legislative body consists solely less of a quorum of the body. So by virtue, it has to be less than a quorum. The second you meet the quorum, you're in a full board meeting. Are subject to the requirements of the Act. Some common examples include finance, personnel, or similar policy subcommittees of the City Council or other legislative bodies that have continuing subject matter jurisdiction or a fixed meeting schedule. And it's an or, not an and. So either it's going to have ongoing jurisdiction or it's going to have a fixed meeting schedule. And so one example I like to give is the City of Riverside. The City Council has 7 standing committees, and they've had that for more than 20 years. And for one of those standing committees, it's called the Governmental Affairs Standing Committee. The reason I think that the Brown Act requires those to be noticed and available to the public is because they don't want those backroom deals where council members are negotiating how to regulate the city council meetings without public input. And so because there's this ongoing jurisdiction that's a policy direction for that city council, those meetings need to be open to the public. Versus if the city council just wants to work with another council member, if a council member wanted to work with another council member to collaborate on a particular policy, and it's not going to go on forever, it's just, hey, I have this idea, let's get it done, I'm going to work with you. That technically is an ad hoc subcommittee, but again, there's no noticing requirements for that. That's just 2 council members basically wanting to work together under the term ad hoc subcommittee. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if I've confused anybody.
So I don't know if this is a point where Ed wants to lead the discussion, but I will take a stab at what I would say if I was in Ed's position. There is we have bylaws, and our bylaws actually identify those standing committees. Whether or not, I don't think they're actually referred to in this bylaws as standing committees as opposed to ad hoc committees. I think they're just referred to as committees. So
They're standing in that bylaws.
okay, so I'm going to go to page, what is it? We've got the entire bylaws here in the meeting minute in the minutes. So they begin on page 29 of the packet. And we have on page 33, it says standing committees, section 1, standing committees. Standing committees will be appointed by the president. Standing committees may consist of advocacy, budget buildings, and policy committees. So it says the standing committees may consist. And typically whenever we've appointed committees, I think where we would come into a problem, and maybe this is where the issue lies, Anthony, is we've actually, put a notice to the public that, and we've actually appointed people to be the leaders of committees that go by the name of budget, buildings, and some other things. But those meetings don't have scheduled meeting dates. And in fact, and also the nominating committee which is on page 33 in section 2, it doesn't say it's an ad hoc committee, but virtually all of these committees act as ad hoc committees. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we bridge that gap? Is it something in our bylaws that we need to fix? Or are we getting in trouble by appointing people to the heads of ad hoc committees? I think those are our pressure points.
Sure. So I'll read this part. Standing committees may, but are not required to have regular meeting schedules. Even if such a committee does not have a regular meeting schedule, its agenda should be posted at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. If this is done, the meeting is considered to be a regular meeting for all purposes. If not, the meeting must be treated as a special meeting. So you have in your bylaws.
And I'm sorry, Anthony, because I won't have you here every day of the week, unfortunately. Sure. Where are you referring to what?
Sure. Actually, it was Jeannie who sent this to me. It was the Best in Krieger, which is our law firm. They have a summary of the major provisions and requirements of the Brown Act.
Okay, so I think that's in our packet, and that's on, it begins on page 28 of our packet. No, that's the wrong thing, sorry.
78.
78?
Yeah, it's at the end.
Okay. We've got a lot of pages today. So, okay, so it starts at page 78, and you're looking at
section A, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Standing committees may or may not require to. Okay. Okay, thank you. So
yeah, so your bylaws clearly state that you have standing committees. The board is appointing the members to that standing committee, whether it's via the president or the board itself confirming it. And as far as I can tell, advocacy, policies, budget's questionable, buildings are questionable, but at least for policies and advocacy, I don't see where there would be a termination date for such an issue. And so to me, that seems that it will have 1, continuing subject matter jurisdiction, and 2, it's less than a quorum of the members, and 3, you already call it a standing committee. So to me, that falls under the jurisdiction of being a Brown Act body. Now with budget, if you were to amend these bylaws and take out budget, for instance, City Council does create an ad hoc subcommittee each year to look at that particular fiscal year's budget, and then they dissolve. But it does not have, it's not subject to the Brown Act. They can meet with the city manager, discuss the issues, give recommendations, and then bring it back to the full council for their deliberations. But if you have an ongoing budget subcommittee that meets, let's say, quarterly, then definitely that should be subject to the Brown Act.
mm-hmm.
And then buildings, I just don't know enough about what topic of buildings would be. And can you give me 1 second? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And so with that, any other?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give you a little bit more clarification, especially as a concern. I mean, to date, we haven't had an advocacy meeting to my knowledge, or a policy meeting. Building committee, we've already discussed. Budget, though, in the past, the way we discuss the budget is usually just having myself or my position person, treasurer, and another board member actually having a meeting with Jeannie about her priorities, and then setting it up in such a way that we've got our ducks in a row so that when we actually have the budget meeting, it's really during a fully noticed meeting of the Board of Trustees. So my concern is whether or not even having any time that two people sit down with Jeannie to discuss something that's going to be discussed in public at a notice meeting, does that meeting prior to the notice meeting need to be noticed?
It just depends on how you structure it. So right now, with it being structured the way it is, then yes, technically the meeting between you and another commissioner meeting with Jeannie should be noticed. However, if you were to amend the bylaws and remove that budget subcommittee, to me, and it is no more than two council members showing up in David's office saying, I want to talk about the budget today. And that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it just depends on how you structure it. Right now, it's structured to be a Brown Act body.
Only because-
Right, so, but still, I think the other thing that you just mentioned too, which is important, is that sometimes what's getting discussed colors whether or not it becomes of public importance. So you're saying, you were, at least I thought I heard, saying that the word budget seems to make it automatically a standing committee. So for us to not put it in the definition of standing committees in our bylaws seems to be at odds.
I'm
I
trying to
heard
say it depends on how you structure it. So if you want to have regular meetings with Jeannie to talk about the budget and present recommendations that will then be presented to the board, that should be a Brown Act body. If you want to meet once a year with Jeannie and it's the treasurer, which makes sense, and one other commissioner or a board member, and it's not appointed by the body. Let's just say it's the treasurer and whoever the current chair is, and that's not appointed. The board's taking no action. It's just to meet with Jeannie and give her feedback, not recommendations, not like you will present this, but just to give her feedback, make sure she's on the right page. That's different. But if you're going in there to literally make recommendations and drive the way the budget's going to go, I guess it's just like you said with the building subcommittee. Is the intent to get public input at that level, or is the intent to just make sure that you're going down the right path, and then at the regular board meeting, getting the public input?
Okay, so I just want to give you one more scenario, given that's what we're just discussing. So, going back to page 78 again of Best and Krieger, where it talks about that if a committee does not have a regular meeting schedule, its agenda should be posted at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. Let's just say that, during the course of our public live meeting, that we decide that the treasurer and another board member are going to meet with Jeannie the next month and discuss the budget. And then Jeannie posts in her usual manner for our public meetings 72 hours before that meeting that we're having this meeting, and our agenda is a general discussion of the next year's budget. Is that what we're supposed, is that a viable way of addressing the Brown Act issues without amending our bylaws?
I'm not quite following, but let's see if I did. Right now, the city council had a lot of ad hoc subcommittees, and they wanted to reduce that down, and instead they created liaisons. And when it was the city council's ad hoc subcommittees, they would be in a council meeting and the mayor would say, Councilmember Middleton and Woods, will you serve as the subcommittee on personnel matters? And they say yes. That is the legislative body taking action to appoint those two members to serve as the subcommittee. The council stopped doing that. Instead, they say, do we have any volunteers to work with the city manager on personnel matters? Two council members raise their hands. and that's it. There's no appointments, there's no, and it's finite. As soon as this issue is done, they need to dissolve. And if you look at our city council subcommittees, 2 years ago, it was about 4 pages. Now it's about 4, a list of 4, not 4 pages.
Right.
So over time, you can see that these ad hocs have diminished and reduced. And that's what we would want to see if you're going to call it an ad hoc. If you're going to call it an ad hoc, but it's going to stay on your list for the next 5 years, then that makes you think that maybe it should be a standing committee.
Right. But then again, we're still running into that issue about, I like the ad hoc structure. I mean, it sounds like it really solves a lot of issues. And the thing is, my concern, I guess they get around what you had said about, certain things sound like a standing committee just because it was an ad hoc. They declared it was an ad hoc committee. So I think that might be a solution. I'm guessing though that we probably have to at least go back to the bylaws on page 33 of our notices here and redefine section 1, which is standing committees. Because I think our preference would not be to have standing committees, because everything that's discussed in these proposed standing committees is really done on an ad hoc basis.
I would just say, think about the spirit of the Brown Act and what it's saying. So if in reality, the budget committee is making recommendations and driving the budget, we want public input at that level. Because if that's the level that even draft decisions are being made, then that's the level that the public wants to be involved at. So I can't tell you what should be or shouldn't be. All I can tell you is the spirit of the law is to gather public input at the appropriate time. And ad hoc committees are intended to be efficient and quick ways to address limited scope issues.
Right. No, I understand what
yeah.
you're saying. So in essence, I think if there was a concern about what was actually being, how difficult it is to discuss in a budget meeting with the treasurer, things that may not, that may rise to the level of public interest. So it's kind of, I think the lesson I think we learn here is that probably just about anything that the treasurer and another board member would discuss with the library director would actually rise to the level of public interest. And to that extent that that meeting should be noticed, and maybe that's the way we should be going forward as far as the budget issue is concerned. I'm not entirely certain that is true for everything else on page 33 that says standing committee. So going back to that issue, I think it sounds as if we probably shouldn't have section 1 standing committees there if in fact we don't have standing committees.
I would think though, I agree with everything you just said except for one other item. I think policies might be of public interest because it could be around anything that deals with how they interact with the department. So I would think that the public might want to know, for example, that we're raising fines to $5 an overdue book or something like that. So I think that policies and budget would be 2 items that my experience would be the public would want to be, maybe have some input in. The other 2, I'm trying to think the last time we even talked about advocacy, to be honest, because we have 2 groups that do a lot of advocacy for us on our behalf. I don't remember that. And this building committee is not the one that the city council named. This building committee traditionally has dealt with other issues related to the actual physical structure that the library has. Correct, Jeannie? I mean, I don't even remember the last building committee we always talked about how we're going to repair the roof, or how are we going to,
Well,
know,
the building
throw-
committee has met to discuss Wellwood. That was a big issue, at least during my
Correct.
terms. Was the
Yeah,
Wellwood.
the last building committee was about Wellwood patio, and then before that, it was the Wellwood renovation.
correct.
So no, I understand what you're saying, Ed, and and actually, going back to what I had said earlier too, is that one of the reasons why these groups don't meet is because every time we've discussed advocacy, getting people to go in front of the city council and make speeches in support of the building committee's results, or other similar measures that are going before the city council. Anything that has to do with policy that Jeannie, our library director, has raised, she just does that here in this forum. So and we agendize them here.
Correct.
So it's not like we really have felt the need, except in extraordinary circumstances. Again, those are ad hoc committees. The Wellwood Murray Memorial Library renovations and the patio, in effect, were ad hoc committees by this definition, because they were only for a specific period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So so everything that we do, that this Section 1 standing committee says here, is really done on an ad hoc basis. So I think maybe for the purpose of, just having the ability, one of these things, in your bylaws, you don't want to limit yourself to doing things either. So, it's good to have the sections that says standing committees in it, if for no other reason that, if we ever decide to actually have standing committees that are not ad hoc, that are going to meet on a regular basis, even if it's quarterly, then at least it's in our bylaws, we can do it. But I think I don't know, I'm getting a better understanding of what Anthony is saying in terms of what we can do on an ad hoc basis. And I think probably, going forward, the next time that we actually have a budget meeting, I think probably in the future, we're probably wise not to have a budget meeting, because maybe something in the course of that meeting will come up that'll be of interest to the public. So it's probably better off that whatever the treasurer and the library director would have wanted to discuss prior to the presentation just gets made in a public forum. I don't know. I do think that there is probably some benefit to having those meetings in private, just to say that, to at least put it in a particular context, to actually inform, to have a conversation about what should be presented in what order, or how to make that presentation. But I think, I think in terms of just being, abundance of caution, maybe just we've been doing so much in the public light already. Why not just do that too? I'm sorry to bore you guys to death.
No, so reason this was on my radar is that it was our first meeting. I was asking for volunteers to be on these standing committees. It was like Groundhog Day. We do that every year. And then these groups may or may not meet. Usually it's may not. So I think it probably wouldn't hurt us to identify or further define what each of these groups would do. And then you're right, determine, is this really a standing committee, or is it really fall into the ad hoc committee at this point? Because I don't know, we meet once a year on budget regardless, at least one meeting, right? So if we were to say that we're having a standing budget committee and the public wants to come and listen to us talk to Jeannie about the trust fund budget, I really don't think I have an issue with that. I mean, that might be okay. I mean, we might want to hear what people that may or may not show up. When it comes, and policy is the same thing. in terms of advocacy, I'm just wondering if that's really needed anymore. You know, could that be an ad hoc committee where we're working with the Friends, or we're working with the foundation, we're working with another group? So I think it's probably worth having a discussion, and bylaws always just give me a headache. But I mean, I think that it's, because I was on the last bylaw committee, if I remember, we changed some things on the bylaws, what, 2 or 3 years ago. But maybe it's time for us to discuss, are these items necessary for a standing public input committee?
If I could throw this out there, not to make it worse, you could also, what council has done is called them liaisons. So for instance, if you want a liaison from the board to the Friends, that's fine. You can appoint them, not appoint them, ask for volunteers, whoever it is. You can even select 2. And those 2 people would be liaisons to that group. They're not ad hoc, they're not standing committees. They're just liaisons talking to the other group and bringing back information to this group.
Anthony,
Yeah.
we have done that. We do that every year, and you're right. That does work nicely, I think, because that is, and it's actually section 5 of our bylaws where we establish liaisons. And we have 4. We have 2 to the Friends and 2 to the foundation at this point.
And then when it came to the budget, I want to give you one more example. So Sustainability Commission has a number of standing committees. One is on solar and green building. They do that because solar and green building is not going to go away anytime soon. And they are building policy direction amongst the board members that then get presented to the full commission. And they're really building the policy from ground up. That certainly should be a standing committee. Versus in the budget world, if 2 council members or 2 library board members want to speak to the director about the order of the agenda and how to manage public comment and how to manage that kind of stuff, that is totally appropriate for a private meeting. That is just how to manage the meeting. That's not building the budget. That's not policy direction. It's really that intention of, you want public input about the direction and the policy of the library, not about the order of the agenda and how to manage the meeting. I hope that helped.
Anthony, I also like, it was intriguing to me when you said that if you meet once a year to discuss the budget in an ad hoc setting, that topic is dissolved once the city council adopts the budget. And so that project is finished.
Yeah.
So that's a very good example. And I hadn't thought of it that way. It's we think about the budget, it goes on and on, but technically it does not, because it's a one-time, it's adopted and then that project's put away.
Right. And instead of calling it the budget standing committee, it's now the fiscal year 2021 ad hoc subcommittee on the budget. That's the difference. If the intention, and you're following the spirit of the Brown Act, and you're not just trying to circumvent the basic rules, but the spirit is, or the intention is to, if you're following it under ad hoc, you're going to meet once or twice, get over it. Once the budget's adopted, it's done.
Yeah, and I know we did not have a meeting this year because we were concerned about whether it was supposed to be a standing committee or not. So we did not have a meeting, but in the past we have gotten together, and then at the next full meeting, then I present my budget, and then
Exactly.
Public group, all discussion.
Yep. Okay.
So I was just wondering. So we shouldn't keep Anthony too long.
Thank you, Anthony.
If you have more to talk about boards or subcommittees, I'm happy to stay, but it's up to you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, back to our agenda. I think this addressed what I had on 8C on our agenda, unless anyone wants to keep that on the agenda or add anything to this at this point.
Does there anybody feel that there's a need to actually do some action at this point?
Well, I would like to propose that the meeting that the treasurer and the president have with Jeannie be now viewed as an ad hoc committee and not as a standing.
Right. Well, yes. If I was going to follow the advice of what we just heard, there seems like there's two options. There's one that actually just means that we actually have to public notice this, or at some point next year, Ed asks for volunteers to actually serve on an ad hoc fiscal year 2022 committee. And we get some volunteers and we move on with that. Those are the two options.
I think the latter makes more sense since that is following city council process as it is now too. So why not mimic what they do?
Mm-hmm.
They'll get in trouble first. So
Does anyone see that there's a need to amend anything in the bylaws at this point?
well, if we rename that committee,
I'm sorry, is anyone else having a really hard time hearing Craig?
Yeah, I turned up the volume for him.
sorry. If we're not going to call that the budget committee, do we still need to have budget committee as a standing committee? Because that's really the only time they meet.
I guess I'm asking, does the more specific question, which is if on page 33 in the packet, do we need to amend section 1?
Can I, Jeannie, help me scratch off a memory here. We inserted the word may for a reason. It gave the president the option to name these standing committees or not, correct?
I think the word may meant that you could or couldn't. I think it meant that if you may appoint those specific committees or not those committees. So it's not that you could choose to make them standing or ad hoc. It meant you would either choose to make that committee be a committee or not a committee.
Correct.
Option to create them, but if we didn't need it, then you didn't have to assign people to those roles.
And I think we've fallen into the practice where we've automatically named people to those. This year, at our annual meeting, I could have said, this year, I feel the need for us to have only a budget standing committee. And the others, I don't think we have a need for this year, and ask for discussion on that. And if we had wanted, and you guys could have said, no, I think we need, we could have at that point, we're not obligated to have 4 standing committees every year. We can pick one or none, correct?
Right.
Okay.
But if you wanted to take the option of creating a fiscal 2022 ad hoc subcommittee, then you might want to just buy section 1 completely and just say that standing committees, and maybe there's the little definition of what a standing committee is based on the Brown Act. It could be, or maybe not. Just say will be appointed.
But if we have that section 1 and it says may, I mean, in the future, we may need to have a standing committee on something or other. So that needs to stay for that reason, because in the future, we don't know what we're going to need, right? So then our budget committee or ad hoc can just be ad hoc because it ends every year, right? I mean,
As long
it's a-
as we call it the budget committee, because by definition, the budget committee is the standing, but
so we
yeah,
would
you-
have to rename it, and it would be an ad hoc committee because it has a beginning and an end every year. And it's not, we don't have monthly meetings or, quarterly meetings or whatever.
Well, going back to David's question, I don't think we need to do anything with the policy because it's permissible. You can have those committees or not have those committees, as
Right.
long as it's there. And then the committee that you and, I'm not gonna call it a committee, the meeting that the president and the treasurer have with Jeannie is the 2021 fiscal committee or
Correct.
whatever it's called, but it would be ad hoc. So our policy, I'm thinking the way it stands now, can be left alone.
And to continue that thought, Craig, I mean, let's say that Jeannie comes to us and said, I need to form a new policy on how we deal with, it could be anything. And I need it to be brought before the public. We could form the policy standing committee in this year and bring that topic for discussion. It could be anything that's going to be changing on, I don't know, but I'm using that as an example. And so we would discuss that at our annual meeting. So Jeannie would have to be prepared that she may have before us this year certain topics that would fall before those. If we don't have anything, we don't form them and we don't assign anybody to them.
you can appoint them at any time. You don't have to do it at
Exactly.
the meeting. Speaking to Ed's example, I'm planning to bring a new policy to you all. But I don't need a subcommittee. I'm just going to write it and our staff, we're going to write it and submit it to the full commission on hotspot lending. So it's now, if we were talking, like Ed was saying, maybe if we were talking about something more elaborate, like a children's use policy, and we wanted to get
Right.
input from the community about
Yeah.
what we think children should have access to, which we would never do that, but something more
Right.
large, like grand, just a one item policy. I'm just gonna submit that.
Only going to let children come in the library on days that end with Y, and we want to
Yeah.
get feedback from the community on something like that. To me, that would be a policy that we would want to have public input by all means before we would announce it or enact it. But you're right, there could be general policies that you're amending or changing that don't need that kind of formal review, correct?
Right, yeah. If it's just something simple and we say, oh, we want to add a little we added some anti-bullying language one year. We didn't form a committee for that. We just proposed it to you and you approved it. I think that makes sense. As long as you all remember that we're doing this.
What do you
Well,
mean?
Lisa's taking notes, right?
What do you mean, remember? I don't know, that sounded kind of ominous. What do you mean, remember?
Well, in a year or two, when we say we need to have a meeting about the budget, we just say, oh, that needs to be a standing committee. Oh, no, it's the ad hoc. It's only about this fiscal year, so.
I'm getting too old to promise those kinds of things. I'm sorry, but okay.
Your minutes, Jeannie.
Yes.
Are there any other discussions around this topic so that we can? Thank you, guys. All right, so can we have the acceptance of the agenda? Can you please talk to us about that, Jeannie?
The agenda was posted on or before what year? I'm looking for an agenda. Where's this one? On or before February 24.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
We do not. Oh, then let me get David Sidley back on.
We accept the minutes.
That's next. Are you bringing someone back on, Jeannie?
Oh, I was just, David Sidley has disappeared and I know he wanted to give a report, so
Okay.
I was texting him to tell him to come back on.
Okay, so next item is the consent agenda. May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move
Okay,
to
I move
accept.
to accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, roll call, please, Jeannie.
Craig Borba,
Yes.
Melissa Crone,
Yes.
Juanita Garner,
Yes,
David Kelly,
Yes.
Ed McBride.
Yes, thank you. Section 6, the administrative reports. So Jeannie, you want to go with the Friends report for us?
Sure. Let's see. The Friends of the Library are hosting an online auction starting March 15th, and it concludes on March 21st. You can see information on social media pages, on their Facebook, on their Facebook page, on their Friends of the Palm Springs Library.org website. And they have some lovely gift baskets and sponsorship opportunities that you can symbolically adopt a koi at the library and help support the koi. You can help support some of our other collections. And they're looking for, I think it'll be a fun fundraiser for the Friends. So that's their report. Hi, David Sidney. Ed, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, you said that was your report?
That's for the Friends.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jeannie on the Friends? Mr. Sidley, how about a report from the Library Foundation?
Okay. We are continuing to work on our internal infrastructure. We did have a meeting with the Friends and the library director to discuss our funding priorities, which was quite successful. You may have mentioned this at one of the previous meetings that the foundation gave a $10,000 grant to the library for the mobile hotspot program that we're quite proud of. Our finance committee is working on our cleaning up our finances, and we're going to start making monthly payments on the loan that we have from the trustees. We did apply for a grant from the Palm Springs Rotary that we haven't heard back on, and we're still getting donations from our year-end annual giving campaign, which we raised about $10,000. We're really excited about that. And that's it.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David and the foundation? Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Library staff, Jeannie?
Okay, so speaking of those hotspots, they did arrive yesterday. So we're going to work
Wow.
policies and our process for that. So we got the hotspots. The state library has another grant opportunity, so we might be able to add some hotspots to that. So that's cool. During the month of February, we had 1,254 pickup appointments for Library A Go-Go. So I'm very proud of that. They've been getting nice little cards and people saying how much they appreciate it. It's really heartwarming. Our library staff have been working hard behind the scenes. They completed the inventory of the adult collection, and they're now working on inventorying the children's collection. This is going to help us run reports to clear out cataloging records for items that are no longer on the shelf, but taking up space in the online catalog. We also found a few items on the shelf with no cataloging records. So it's going to help us clear the shelves a little bit of some of those ghosted items that's sitting out there. And this inventory is an effective tool. And I'm very proud of my staff. We worked really hard to get this done while the library was closed. We have roughly 100,000 items in the library in the collection. So this was a large endeavor. So I'm very proud of that. We just started a new collection. We have a Blu-ray collection. I know Blu-rays are not super new to technology, but we finally started adding them to the collection. There's just this whole question about whether people have Blu-ray players or not. So we're starting with a small collection. We're going to see how it goes and see what sort of circulation it gets. And like I said, the Friends are having their online auction. We're excited about that. We've got the gift baskets on display in the, some of them, not all of them. There are some that are not in the window, but we've got some on display in the windows of the front of the library. So you can come and take a look at the actual gift baskets if you want. We had a Black History Month display in the windows, which is really popular. And then this month we've got pinch proof books. They're green covers of the books. And it's really neat. People window shop and they're like pointing and say, I want that one. And then we pick it up and check it out to them. So it's kind of fun. You know, it's the ultimate window shopping. Again, we're still doing our virtual programming. We've got a lot of fun things going on this month. Be sure to join a book club. We've got lots of active book clubs. We're seeing large turnouts. Thank you, David Kelly, for hosting one of our book clubs. Our story times are on Facebook, but the videos are living on YouTube. So check out our YouTube channel. We've got lots of videos there. Our teen events are on Instagram Live, but you can go back and watch them on IGTV. This month's youth activity is Craft Along Teacup Planters. So our children's librarian shows ideas on how to paint the teacup, but it's a planter. It's designed, it's not an actual teacup because it has a hole in the bottom to drain, but you get some potting soil and some seeds and a paint kit and the ceramic teacup. It's really cute. And so you can watch that video starting March 9th and start picking up kits starting March 9th. Those are intended for children preschool through grade 5. Our teens they're commemorating the 1-year anniversary of the coronavirus pandemic lockdown in the United States by creating coronavirus pinata kits. So just take out your frustration on the pinata. This is intended for teens in grades 6 through 12. They're going to get Sean, the teen librarian, is going to do. He's going to do a live video on Monday the 8th, so you can watch him build and destroy his pinata. I think that'll be pretty hilarious. And so you can pick up pinata kits starting on March 8th too. Our adult program is Rock Painting 101, and you can watch me do rock painting. And it's a new hobby for me. I'm brand new at this. It's pretty funny. But I learned a lot watching other people on YouTube and Facebook. So craft kits are available. They're going fast. We are going to run out of craft kits this week. So you can pick up a craft kit for the rock painting program, and that one tomorrow at 10 a.m. on our YouTube channel. And then and I picked 3 rocks. There are 3 rocks, so you can jump ahead and watch 3. It's basically 3 tutorials in one. And then our children ages 4 through 12 can participate in the In-N-Out Burger cover-to-cover reading program. Excuse me. The program has been going on for years. I know it's been going on since I've been a librarian, and that was 2002. So I know this program's been going on a long time. Every spring, In-N-Out Burger hosts this reading program. For every 5 books that you read, you turn in your reading log, and you get a certificate for a free burger from In-N-Out Burger. And you can do that 3 times. So you just read 15 books from March 6th through April 17th. And Lisa is brilliant. My operations manager, Lisa Brock, right there her name's on the screen, but she is brilliant. She said, let's put it on Beanstack. So you don't even have to come to the library to register. You can just go on our virtual reading program. There's a mobile app. It's called Beanstack. Just look for Palm Springs Public Library. You do have to be ages 4 through 12. Obviously, a parent would enroll the child. And you can track your reading and earn your badges. And then once you earn your badges, just come to the library to get your certificate. So you don't have to come here to register online. So visit our website, pslibrary.org, for information on that. That starts Saturday, March 6th. And that's my report.
Well, I think I'm just so impressed with everything that you're able to do right now. It's just amazing to me to hear about all this stuff that's going on. And the Corona Piñata idea is amazing. I'm just so in love with that. I think I'm gonna have to steal that idea and do something with my students, because I think that's just incredible. So I just really, every time you talk about what's going on at the library, I'm blown away at what you are able to do. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jeannie, the governor set aside vaccines for teachers. Did that include librarians? Do you know?
No, we're at this point, we are listed in the governor's guidelines for service, we are listed as retail, but we are also government employees. So we're waiting to find out when we can get everyone vaccinated. I've got honestly about half of my employees are vaccinated now, so that's really good.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if everybody's vaccinated, we could start opening up a little bit more.
Yeah, I would be open to that. I think that would be a good idea. Get us vaccinated and we can get this place reopened.
I know that there's a waiting list that they have at DAP, that at the end of the day, if they have some vaccinations they have to give and there's nobody to give them to, if you're on that list, they'll call you, and if you can be there in 15 minutes, they'll give you the shot. So some of your librarians may want to look into that.
That's a great idea. I heard of another library in another county that their city worked with the local nursing homes and said, put us on your list. If you have 1 dose left, 2 doses left, we will be there in minutes. And they were able to get about half of their staff vaccinated just through the leftovers.
That's great.
I think that things are going to open up pretty soon. You know, I feel very confident that things are going to improve quickly, because I know they made educators a priority. And I know in our state, educators already, we would like to be considered educators. We work with children, and so.
Well, I won't be around in 2022 on this board, but I hope my colleagues will remember that that is going to be your 20th year as a librarian. So mark your calendars. I have a question. Oh, and one other thing. I have 2 questions. One is, you probably saw on the news that Dr. Seuss books were being recalled. And I don't know if we have any of those recalled books in our collection. But if we do, you might want to pull them for, I'm sure you will pull them for the Friends of the Palm Springs Library, because I hear some of those books are going for like $10,000 on eBay. No? There's
been some discussion on social media with the librarians about what to do. And please don't check out our books and sell them. Just please don't. Don't do it. So there's a discussion about maybe the libraries should temporarily put those books aside so that they don't get checked out and stolen.
Well, I mean, is that a question? I mean, I would just think that you would automatically do that if the estate of of Dr. Seuss is already doing that.
Well, and we don't, not necessarily. We don't necessarily just pull things based on what's happening in current events, like Bill Cosby books or.
Oh, well, yeah.
So we also don't tend to sell items out of our collection either. So we would just have to evaluate the titles and see if we even have them. I didn't look today, but it's a kind of on my radar to check, because I know a lot of people said, oh, the whole lists have gone crazy at their libraries. So I was going to look at that.
Yes, well, I'm glad that you don't sell things out of your collection, but one of the things that concerns me though too is this inventory process, because I think, which you discussed at the beginning of the top of your thing, I'm really congratulating you based on getting it done. It's great. I don't know if you call what you're doing the same thing as I think other what we would refer to as culling the stacks, so to speak, or there's always it seems like there's always an issue for libraries to actually take the time to actually go through their collection and eliminate ones that, don't seem to be circulating as much. Is that what you're doing when you call it inventory?
No, we do collection development. So we do monitor our collection all the time, and we run reports and we check for conditions. So we do a couple of ways. We run reports to check what hasn't circulated in a long time, and it depends on the categories too, because if it's medical books, they should not be on the shelves longer than just a few years, because then they become outdated. And so there are guidelines. So we have guidelines about that. And we monitor all of our collection that way. And then we physically go to the shelves and we check the items for condition. And so if they're really icky, falling apart, we look at the book and decide, do we need to order a replacement, or has this book lived its life and needs to go to the grand recycle bin in the sky? So
You're muted.
we look at that. We do look at the collection ongoing in that way. And then the inventory is physically just a scan, and then it puts an inventory date into the computer. And so we physically scanned every barcode of every item. And then what that does is create a point in time count. And so then we can run reports based on when the fiction books, when was their last inventory? And if they never were inventoried, they were not on the shelf when we did our inventory. And so that tells us those books are gone. And then we need to clear those records off the computer. So this was just a physical count. We went and we scanned every barcode. But what you're talking about is collection development and weeding. And if something's lived its then we have to make room for new stuff, because we get new stuff all the time. So you have to keep your collection alive. And we make sure that we have space on the shelves for the new stuff, that the information we put out on our shelves is not misleading or outdated or a duplicate, and travel books is a good example too. We want to constantly try to keep the latest travel guides. So nobody wants to check out the 2005 Disneyland book because it's not, it's out, and so there are people that get very upset sometimes when they see things getting recycled, but the information is misleading and out of date, or the book is really crummy and moldy or water damaged. And so there are a lot of things we do about that.
So realistically, what's happening is inventory, not taking out the moldy ones.
Well, no, not when I talk about inventory, I'm talking about physically scanning every barcode, and that's different. And we are also doing collection development where we're watching, and we do that all the time.
Is there an outstanding goal at this point about collection development in terms of how much of the collection needs to be weeded out at this point?
No, there are a lot of factors involved in that. It depends on the collection too, and the space. Like the teen collection, it tends to have a higher turnover as far as we get new books there more frequently than we might in the history collection. So it really, everything's dependent. The children's picture books, they get destroyed. So we tend to buy a lot of picture books and try to get rid of the really the nasty ones. People are not going to check that out. It's gross, and nobody wants to handle that book that's falling apart and the pages are ripped or colored on. So So yeah, there are different criteria for all the collections, and we have, I mean, my librarians do this, and so they have their specialties, and they work on that all day, every day, it seems like.
So you don't actually have collection development goals on an ongoing basis?
No, we don't say, well, we're going to get rid of 20% of the items or anything like that. No, we have our guidelines where we say we really shouldn't have anything in, as an example, the science collection that's more than 10 years old. I don't know exactly the guideline, but we do have guidelines like that. And there's a it's called the CREW method, CREW. It's from the Texas State Library, and it's online. You can go look at it, and it's a really good guide on just foundational collection development policy of what a typical public library should have. So again, it's the CREW method.
Any other questions for Jeannie?
I don't know, Jeannie, did you want to present page 9 at all? Or was there something in page 9 that we want to talk about?
Let me look. I was like, what is page 9? Statistics.
Statistics.
We have, like I said, with the book clubs and stuff, we've had a really good turnout. That's the live attendance for adult programs. We had 76 people attend our book clubs in January. And I think that's great. I think that's a good statistics. We've got the Wi-Fi usage. I mean, obviously our numbers are, if you can't compare this year and last year, because last year was a completely different thing. You know, we were, although if you look at our downloadables, they're up 12%. So we're happy about that. Something's been nagging me. I'm trying to remember what it was that I wanted to tell you, but maybe it was that our downloadable magazines moved over to Overdrive, the Overdrive platform. And we went from about 100 titles to at least 1,000 titles. Their publicity says 3,000 titles, but you should go take a look at the magazines, and not just the popular 100, but if you go into the collections and browse, the magazines are wonderful, and you can download them to your phone or your tablet, and they are current magazines you would buy off the newsstand. So I highly recommend that, and that's something that we pay for, so you don't have to. So you might as well go check it out.
Can I have a question on the one thing that seems like it's brand new here, because it doesn't have a number for 2020, but in 2021, we have on-demand viewing of 456 on page 9.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that?
Those are our videos on YouTube and Facebook. It's a new category that the California State Library is asking us to gather, and live attendance too. I mean, obviously we had live attendance before, but live attendance in this aspect means live online. So if we're having a Zoom or
The book clubs,
or Instagram Live,
right?
It's the attendance on the live stream. And then on-demand viewing is if someone watches a video that's recorded. And so that's why those categories are there, and the state's asking us to track that.
And the category is preschool, school age, family. That's the subject matter driven, not based on whether or not somebody showed their driver's license.
True, yeah, it's based on the subject matter, and it's kind of, we have to decide, is it family or is it school age? And so we just try to be consistent. If we say craft alongs for kids are school age, they're always going to be school age and not family.
And on-demand viewing is strictly content that you guys are creating? Is there anywhere that you are recording like the Acorn views or anything like that?
That is in a whole different area of statistics that you don't even get. But Yeah, we do track our acorn and our canopy viewing. That's what it was. It was canopy. Canopy is currently off, but we are going to get that restarted in the next coming days. So that's what it was. I was like, I knew it was something. So yeah, we track that, the database usage and the streams in a separate area. They're not on this report. But we do keep track of that. And then it does go on our state report too, which you can view those as well on the state library's website.
Thank you.
Anything else for Jeannie? Okay, so we move on to our treasury report.
Okay, at this late hour, can we stand anymore? Jeez. Okay, folks, we're going to rip page.
Do you want me to share the screen?
Sure, why not? It's page, what is it? 9, 10, and 11.
Okay, just a moment.
So on page 10 here that you can see the cash balance is 1,820,933.99. This is actually an increase because of the next page, page 11, where if you go down, you can see that there's, for interest, we've got $30,076.39 kind of in the middle of the page for interest allocation. Now, I don't know what that's based on. You could see previously our interest was credited once for the first quarter at 16,000. Then we got an adjustment down to 8,000. And now, going from 8,000 to 3,000 seems like somebody else made another adjustment. I would guess that probably there's somewhere between 8,000 and 6,000 really should have been our interest allocation for the month. So I think that's probably we're going to just have to keep an eye on that because, this is something that the city does. And if we get an adjustment near the end of the year to actually boost that back up, that'll get us whole. But if I would do anything for the next year, just kind of circle that with a red line to say, what's up with this number? And that's all I've got. I know Jeannie has a number of other pages here. I think of note, and I bear with me, I haven't really reviewed this all that carefully, but if you go to page 44 of a report that Jeannie put into the packet that came from the city treasurer, our Nancy Pauley, director of city finance. She had a report that was dated December 31st, 2020. And you should keep in mind that our fiscal year is June 30th. So I suspect that why she was reporting at the end of that from the date of December 31st, 2020, might just because the financial manager of all this money does a calendar year as opposed to a fiscal year. There's nothing here that's indicating to me whether or not this is a 6-month statement or not. From all practical purposes, I would say that this is a snapshot in time. So at December 31st, 2020, this is what all of the investments for the city look like.
The finance department does a monthly report, a monthly treasurer's report. And so that was just the latest one that was on their website. So you can find those on the city's website. And every month they post a new report.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't know whether or not there's anywhere in the city's report anything that says a cumulative figure for things like interest, or like, for example, on this page that we're showing here right now, it says in really teeny type at the middle, at the bottom, near the bottom, it says monthly portfolio yield 1.63%. So given that this is a day and time, I would say that at, for the month of December, that the entire portfolio for the city got a 1.63% return.
which was so
I think anybody here would probably have figured that there probably would have been a 1% plus return on money invested conservatively, whether it was invested by us or by them. What this doesn't tell me, because what the way that the city actually does is the city actually parcels out the total interest that they feel that they're holding for other organizations, and then parcels it out on a per capita basis, so to speak. As you can tell from just this page alone, each one of these rows here has its own rate of return. So what bucket we're getting a rate of return out of, or whether or not it's this entire monthly portfolio yield that we're getting a rate of return on, I don't know. I can't answer that question. So it's all I can do is just say that this is a good rough estimate of what we would expect to return. And the other information you can get out of this is you can see what kind of investments they're making, how conservative they are. The report also said some comment about how liquid the investments are. It's an interesting read in that perspective. Jeannie, did you have anything else to add about this report? I'm grateful that you added it. If you can send me the email address, I don't know where I can find it in the future. That might be interesting, but I don't see it in the additional information page.
An email address, or you mean the website?
I'm sorry, the website address.
Oh, yeah. Certainly. If you I'll tell you, if you go to the city's website and then go to the finance department, in the treasury section is where this is in. With your trust funds, the way I was told from the finance department is that it is just all lumped together. And so we don't specifically have a certain amount in each one of these banks or portfolios. We are just part of the giant balance. And so that's, if that helps answer that question. But yeah, I included this because you were asking about the city's investments and the rates and things like that.
Right. It's kind of interesting because the thing is, though, the money that we get paid is probably more liquid than some of these investments here. So, for example, something that's earning like 2.35%, I wouldn't expect to actually be liquidated and pay us interest. So that's why I was kind of like saying, why would they pay us a blended rate that's higher than what they earned on their most liquid assets? So if I was going to make an argument for us managing it on our own, one of the things that you would do is you'd probably want to invest a portion of this on a longer term basis and probably get a higher rate of return. So if in fact what they're paying us giving us interest is based on their shorter term investments, then we're missing out on making a better return. But it's so marginal because interest rates are so low. So who's to say?
I would suggest that nobody invest in PepsiCo for a while. Looking at the return that they're receiving from that. That's on that other page at the top.
Nobody invest in PepsiCo?
Yeah, did you see the return?
Oh, no. What is it? It's, oh, 0.4%. Yeah, well,
It's not a good investment. You know, the other nonprofits that I'm involved with invest their money, and the return they have for this last fourth quarter is phenomenal. And I'm seeing that for the fourth quarter, they got 1.63. It's not good. It's not good.
Oh,
Secure, not good.
yeah, again, I don't know if, I think that this is just a monthly report. So even a quarter might actually be a better snapshot, if we had 90 days worth of information on this report. I don't know if we have 90 days of information. All I'm saying is that I seen that this is a monthly report and it's reporting for December.
Yeah, you are highly encouraged to go look at that information. It is all public, and I'll put it in the chat. But we'll just let them worry about that.
That's all I've got, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Let's move on to our discussion items. A, information regarding the library trust fund finances and the Friends of the Library transactions. Jeannie, is that yours?
One moment. Let's see. Oh. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me get back to that. What page is it?
We're on the agenda on page 2.
Oh no, I think did I have a memo or not?
8A.
Okay. Okay. So let me share the screen again. I had to find the page. So the question came up about the library trust fund, the cash account and the Friends of the Library transactions and all of that. And I'm happy to report that we are pulling the Friends transactions and the Friends account lines out of the trust fund. So it won't be a problem anymore. And it will take us a little bit of time to get that to actually, I think the transfer happened, but it might take a little bit for you to see the accounts disappear. But I wanted to tell you that I did include detailed financial accountings of the cash, the revenue accounts that do come in under your umbrella. Anything that I deposit into the trust fund, right now the Friends revenue, which is going to be pulled away, and then anything that's comes into us as an unrestricted donation. So if someone walks up to us and says, hey, I want to donate $10. We sometimes will ring that in, if that comes in, we ring it into the cash register as a donation and it goes into your account. It ends up in your cash account. So I listed them as sub accounts because they all do live in that cash fund, but they have, account names that are underneath it. So any deposits that come in under those accounts ultimately land in your cash balance, the 11010. And we are moving the Friends out of your accounts. We do owe the Friends $119.50 from their December book sales. So you might see those in the line items, which you can look at, but just wanted to let you know that there may be you'll see one more transaction coming out. But then after that, it's going to be separated from you.
Good.
Awesome. Thank
It
you.
was easier than I thought. I thought it was going to be really complicated.
Good. Thank you. You're the next item up as well.
Okay, and at your last meeting, there was a request to put this on the agenda to go ahead and request an additional $5,000 from the Cropitzer Trust to be spent on nonfiction books.
And So we need a motion to accept
Move
this.
that, I'll move that we make this request.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Craig Borba,
Yes.
Melissa Cronin,
Yes.
Juanita Gardner,
Yes,
David Kelly,
Yes.
Ed McBride.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. 5-0.
The next item we can skip because I think we've discussed the committee structure. Treasurer Kelly, January 25th memo, discussion item number 1. Would you like to-
Would anyone, given the late hour, object to pushing this into next month?
No? And maybe we can put this further up on the agenda so we can get to it first. Would that be okay?
Oh, whatever you like. I mean, unless there's a pressing, it's nothing particularly pressing, but yeah, I mean, sure.
All right. I'm okay with that if everyone else has any objections.
Good with that.
Any comments from the trustees? Staff comments? Any
Donation.
future agenda items besides the one we just pushed to next time? Good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much again for a very good meeting. I think we covered a lot of great information. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 7:03 p.m. So thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Much.
Okay.
Thanks.
all right, good night.